All right. We're back. We're back again for week 9. Sorry, everybody, for not being here last week. I didn't have power, so I was in the Stone Age last week. Didn't know what to do. I'm on a desktop, so I'm not like mobile or very portable, so I couldn't really do anything. I was just kind of sitting at home cleaning my house because I didn't know what else to do without power. So that's the reason why we weren't here last week. I apologize to everybody if you had start-sit questions or trade questions or anything like that, and we couldn't get to them. That was the issue last week. But we're back again today. Myself and the amazing John Paulsen, as always. How you doing this morning, John?
I'm doing all right. And I would just recommend, I'm a wise old veteran of power outages. I would recommend just having a book on hand so you don't have to clean your apartment if you don't want to. You could just read a good book.
I haven't read a book in a long time.
Right.
I honestly don't know if I would enjoy that more than cleaning. Because at least cleaning, there's like a reward at the end. It's like, oh, everything's nice and fresh and clean, and
fair enough.
But yeah, maybe I'll give a book a try next time the power outage goes out. But all right, so we got some questions in here already. Yam Baggy's already joining in the chat. He's asking about Will Levis, specifically from a dynasty landscape. He was able to pick him up off of waivers. And then once his quarterback room gets healthy, he's going to have Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis in a one-quarterback dynasty league, which I think is great, honestly. The fact that even though it's a one-quarterback league, all these guys are just devalued from a normal super flex. But you have guys that I think all have the opportunity to be difference-maker fantasy players for you at the quarterback position because they have the elite rushing ability. They have, at least Murray has good passing ability on top of it. Richardson seems like he has that ability. Levis, after his first game, seems like he could have that as well too. We haven't seen the rushing upside from him yet in the NFL, but based on what he did in college, that could still be coming too. So I really like it. I like Will Levis from a dynasty perspective. I tweeted out last night during the game that he's already a top 18 quarterback for me in dynasty quarterback rankings. And depending on how the month of November goes for him and a couple other quarterbacks, he could bump up into the top 15, closer to a QB1. Do you have any takes on Will Levis?
Well, I think I saw John Daigle say yesterday that he's already top 16 quarterback in the league, which tells you about the state of quarterback in the league. I don't know exactly what he meant by that. The Dynasty League football rankings, consensus rankings, haven't moved yet, but they might have moved a bit, but he's at 28 right now. So I think he'll be moving up those dynasty rankings pretty quickly. If Yam Baggy was asking about Levi's are good in dynasty. They're good jeans that last a long time. If you get the classic cut, you don't want to go anything. You don't want to go crazy with the cuts, but go trendy. But the classic jeans. Sorry, that's a dad joke there.
Those are the Brett Favre jeans, right? Is he the Levi guy?
Well, Levi's makes a lot of different types of jeans, but yeah, he had the jorts on during the draft back in the day. So I just saw Levi's there and chuckled. He looked, pretty good. I think through 2 games, that's a good start for him, and boosting, I think, DeAndre Hopkins remainder of season.
Yeah.
And I think it helps. You're probably a little more optimistic about Derrick Henry, who delivered again last night and has a great, he's on the Titans for the rest of the year, and he's got a great playoff schedule. So if you in your league have anybody, or the Henry owner is kind of lukewarm on him, you might be able to pry him off of him because he's got a real good close of season and might win some leagues again this year.
Yeah, he looked good last night. And the stats don't necessarily reflect that. He had a below 60% completion percentage. He did throw an interception, but that was at the end of the game. He had you had to make something happen at the end of the game on that very last play.
Yeah.
But over 260 yards. So
nice throws. And maybe he wouldn't have got to that yardage if they didn't get that 4th down penalty towards the end there. But yeah, you can't really throwing in the end zone trying to win the game. You can't really. He's doing the best he can. Maybe there's nobody open and it's going to get picked. So you don't really count that one against him.
Yep, for sure. Also, speaking of last night, Kyle says to fire Matt Canada. And he's asking if we can get a Screw Matt candidate on here for good measure, of course.
I'm seeing videos of restaurants in Pittsburgh, and they get the Fire Canada chant going. And it took me a minute to figure out what was going on and what Canada was. I was like, why do they Fire Canada, like the country? And then I was like, oh, this is Pittsburgh.
Matt Canada.
They start chanting Fire Canada. It's a weird deal there. He's been kind of bad for people.
Kind of bad?
Well, I mean, Mike Tomlin's a good head coach, right?
Yes.
Why is he keeping him?
No idea.
So
they stick with their guys, which is the annoying aspect of why I hate the fact that we have Kenny Pickett too, because he's also not good. And a lot of people want to say that, well, Matt Canada is not doing him any favors. And he's not. But Kenny Pickett himself is also not good. But I know that they're going to stick with him as long as they possibly can.
I did see a stat that Kenny Pickett has like top 3 rating in the fourth quarter. He's like with Mahomes.
To be honest, I believe that. He has one drive every game, just like how Pickens has one catch every game. Pickett has one drive every game that everybody loses their mind for.
How nice is it to have Deontay Johnson back? Watching him run routes.
It's so great. But yeah, we want Matt Canada fired as soon as possible. Hopefully the Raiders can sign him. I think they have a head coach or offensive coordinator opening now. So Vegas, if you need a good word for an offensive coordinator, I will write a letter of recommendation as best as I can. Charles hit us with a $2 super chat. He said, thanks for the great content. Should I drop Dalton Schultz for Taysom Hill to plug in his tight end spot? It seems like a ridiculous question on the surface, but I think when you dive a little bit deeper, this is not necessarily a bad move.
Yeah, I've got Hill higher in my rest of season rankings. I completely misranked Taysom Hill last week. I thought with Juwan Johnson coming back and the season that Juwan Johnson had last year and all the hype or whatever, the Derek Carr, Juwan Johnson connection in the preseason, that he would absorb most of Taysom Hill's routes, because all of a sudden Taysom Hill over the last few games is running routes like a normal tight end. Mm-hmm. He's also, carrying the ball, but and his routes did decline. Juwan Johnson did see a significant number of tight end routes, but what I didn't account for is he's basically the RB2 as well. They're not running Jamal Williams much. They're using Taysom to give Kamara a breather as a pivot off of Kamara. So mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit dangerous, but when you look at his usage over the entire half season and given the nature of the position, he's pretty valuable when you're thinking 5 to 7 carries. He's running 15 or 17 routes, might get a couple catches. Mm-hmm. He also, I think, threw a pass for 44 yards. Like mm-hmm. They'll use him in that manner as well. So
they use him in the red zone as well, too.
A lot, yeah. Yes. And he had the 2 touchdowns against the Bears. So comparing him to like Dalton Schultz, I think, who is going to get, most of the tight end routes and most of the tight end catches for Houston, it's just not a fair comparison for Schultz because of what Taysom Hill does. Mm-hmm. And I think if he's tight end eligible, in some leagues now, he's back at quarterback. I don't know what's going on. Some of these leagues made the decision to move him back to quarterback, but he's in a tight end, part-time tight end role, part-time running back role. And he's also occasionally throwing the pass, and they use him in the red zone a lot. So I think he's certainly a low-end tight end 1 rest of season.
Yeah, I would also be looking to make that move as well, too. We have another super chat in here, but we'll get to that right after this. But this just flows nicely with the Taysom Hill conversation. Adventures from the Q was asking, full PPR tight end streaming this week. Who do you prefer between Taysom Hill, Trey McBride, who had a phenomenal week last week, or Logan Thomas, who has seen a pretty decent target share when healthy with the Commanders? Do you like Taysom Hill over these two guys this week?
PPR tight end premium, he gets a little slightly dicier because he doesn't catch a ton of passes.
I think it's just tight end streaming, I think is what he.
Right. Yeah. Well, he's saying PPR. I'm just, full PPR tight end streaming. Or it says steaming. So Uh, this week I do have Logan Thomas ahead, but I think it's not a big difference in terms of points, projected points, once you get outside the first few tight ends. So McBride is. Actually, I have McBride number one amongst these three. I've got him at 8 with 8.9. It's a bad matchup against Cleveland, so you just got to be prepared. We got a quarterback change as well. Rest of season, I like McBride quite a bit, and I would have Hill ahead of Logan Thomas as well. But this week, not so much.
I might be willing to throw Taysom Hill in there. I am a little bit worried about and I am a little bit worried about the quarterback change. Like that could have just been a Josh Dobbs thing. So give me, like sidetrack that gives me confidence for TJ Hawkinson rest of season was what Dobbs was doing with Ertz and then now Trey McBride. Don't know if we see. I don't know if that's a product of like Gannon's offense or the Cardinals' offense in general and how they want to use the tight end, or if that was Josh Dobbs. So I'm a little hesitant.
I think this is, and I think I mentioned that Taysom Hill scored against the Bears, but he played the Colts last week. They played the Bears this week. I think the issue with Taysom Hill is the lack of receptions in full PPR format. So that's the one thing with the projections. So you're basically saying, I'm going to start you. I know you might only get 1 catch or 0 catches, but I'm going to ride your rushing ability, and I'm hoping you don't give me a 10-yard 0 touchdown game. Like, I hope you find the end zone and maybe rush for 30 or 40 yards. But, look at last week, 9 carries for 63 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, fantastic week at the tight end position. He's been in PPR. He's been over 12 last 3 games, and it just keeps going up. So it's not much of a difference in the projections. So if you want to start Hill, go for it. I just worry about if he doesn't score a touchdown, what's he going to give you?
Right. What's the floor outside of that?
Yeah.
So Adventures from the Queue, hopefully that helped a little bit. But AJ, like I said, AJ threw us a $5 super chat. So thank you so much for the support for this. So he's asking this week, Tua against the Chiefs or Burrow against the Bills. And then he also notes that you get a 10-point bonus if you go over 300 passing yards, which is a very interesting extra little stat on top of that. So they both have, I was going to make like the Tua plays the Chiefs game. That game could be over like 60 points this week, but Burrow plays the Bills. That game also could probably be over 60 total points as well. So do you have a preference between the two? They're probably neck and neck in rankings.
Yeah. Interestingly, I'm just looking at the projections. It's 19.1 for Burrow. He's got the 1.9 pass touchdowns in addition to 275 yards passing projected, and he's running the ball a little bit, 15 yards. Tua doesn't run the ball a whole lot, but I have him for a higher passing yard projection at 281, but his fantasy point projection is at 16.4. So I would say Burrow is, for being 5 and 6 in the rankings, Burrow is significantly ahead, and I would start him, but Tua might have a slightly better chance at that 300-yard bonus. So I don't know. I think I would probably go with Burrow at home against Buffalo. Buffalo's defense not quite as good with all the injuries they've had. I think AFPA, adjusted fantasy points allowed, is catching up with that. Our signature strength of schedule metric on the site. And I think that the one thing about the London games and the German games, just kind of a weird environment. I think it takes a little while for some of the teams to kind of settle in, and they're kind of odd first quarters, and it's not like a normal, at Miami or at Kansas City type game. It's like they've got all this weird stuff going on, and it's a little distracting for the players, and it's a different stadium and everything. So that slightly concerns me. I think I'm going to get up for that game and watch it, which is rare for those European games, but I would lean Burrow in this. I think, he's at 275 yardage, Tua at 281. Not a big difference there. I'd probably go with the guy who's got the higher rushing floor and probably the higher touchdown equity. KC is second in quarterback adjusted fantasy points allowed. Like, they're a good defense. So,
yeah. Like, I was going to note, like you mentioned about Tua probably having a better odds of hitting the 300. Like, he's done that 4 times already this year, and then had another game at 282 that was so close to it. Now, he has been weird. Like all 4 of those 300+ yard games were against like really bad defenses. And then the 2 like good defenses that he played against the Bills. That was the 282 game. Only threw 1 touchdown, also threw a pick. And then the Panthers, surprisingly enough, are also a top 10 pass defense. Now, maybe that's because you just run the ball on them the entire time. But he did have 262 and 3 against the Panthers. So he didn't hit 300, but he did have 3. And Burrow only has 1 300-yard game this year, but that was in the past 3 weeks when he's looked like phenomenally better over the past 3 weeks. And he's thrown 2+ touchdowns in each of the past 3 weeks as well, too. So,
well, he also had 283 against San Francisco,
the Niners. Yeah,
on the road. Like that was an impressive win.
I think I go with Joe Burrow as well. I think I trust in the little bit more of the rushing upside that he has as a little bit more of a buffer. And then, just as easy it is for Tua to eclipse 300 because Tyreek takes one to the house from 70 yards. Jamar Chase could do the exact same thing. And Higgins looks healthier now too. I don't know. I mean, Mixon, you could probably say could run a little bit on Buffalo, but Mixon hasn't necessarily been the most effective running back this year. That could just be a massive game, just as the Chiefs and Dolphins game could be. And I think I would probably just go with Joe Burrow. But this is very close. This is a tough decision for sure. So AJ, hopefully we helped you out there, and thank you for the super chat as well too. Francis. Oh, never mind. Yeah, we'll just stick with Francis because I said his name already. There's a couple more before this. I'll get to you guys next. But Francis says if London manages a practice in limited fashion today, and then is playing on Sunday, would you start him or Jackson Smith and Jigba? And he does note that London wasn't spotted at the open portion to media so far, so that might be indicative that London is once again not practicing today, and then might not even be playing on Sunday, which makes your decision easier. But if London is active, would you play him or JSN?
I have Smith and Jigba. We don't have a scoring system. I'll just assume PPR. Smith and Jigba at 49. If London were to play and they were deeming him healthy enough to play with Tyler Heineke, Taylor Heineke? Tyler Heineke. I've already forgotten his first name. Taylor. Tyson. We've got all these T's.
Tyrod.
Probably an upgrade at quarterback from Desmond Ridder. I probably would have him higher than Smith and Jigba, who, when he did score last week, right? But not trustworthy when DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are both healthy. Still waiting for him to really carve out a huge role in that Seattle passing game. But I do not think that London's going to play. He's not in the rankings for that reason. Yeah,
I would play London if he were active. But I agree. I don't think he's going to be active. So it's going to make your decision probably a little easier. Phoenix is asking, how are you ranking these flexes between Darrell Henderson, Chuba Hubbard, and Tank Dell? Don't have a scoring system. Maybe we could just default to half PPR. But these are 3 interesting names.
These are the questions, right? The tried men's souls. You get into these weeks where you need a player, and we got guys that are all you can make a case for everybody. I
think Chuba's number 1 for me.
I think Henderson so too. Certainly, I think from a floor standpoint, Chuba, it seems like he has now taken over the RB1 role in Carolina. Like they barely used Miles Sanders. He was like the 3rd running back last week.
Right.
Now that could change, but as it stands, I mean, we kind of go off of what has happened the last few weeks. So I think I would have him as my top, certainly my floor play. And he's ahead of Tank Dell. So Chuba's at 40 in the flex rankings. Tank Dell's at 57. And Darrell Henderson is at 52. So of the 3, Chuba also has the best rushing matchup. Tank Dell, I do
pretty good against Green Bay, though.
Yeah, they're both pretty close. The only issue with Henderson is that he does split time, or he has been kind of splitting time with Royce Freeman. Freeman got the touchdown, I think, last week too. So I would go Chuba.
Chuba's number 1, then Henderson, then Tank. That's the way I would go for it.
Me too.
Peter says, hey guys, pick one in flex Pick one to flex in a PPR league between Jordan Addison, Rashee Rice, Tank Dell again, or Ramondre Stevenson. He would rather not start Ramondre, but if he ends up being number one on the list, maybe we could convince him to. But I think Tank Dell, I've kind of excluded him from this conversation. Addison has the quarterback change. Rashee Rice has a decent matchup against Miami. Or Ramondre. Do we convince him to start Ramondre here? That is the question.
There's a fourth one here.
I think I start Ramondre.
So this is definitely you're talking about running back versus receiver in the flex, and this is a floor ceiling play. Believe it or not, Tank Dell 56, Jordan Addison 57, Rashee Rice at 58. So like this is
neck and neck.
They're all tied basically in the projections. I probably have the most confidence of those three. If you wanted to start one of those three,
Rice.
probably in Rice, but Tank Dell's maybe close. I don't know what's going to happen with Addison with this quarterback change. I think it could be really ugly. So that's the concern. You might want to just go with the guy with the best quarterback, which is Mahomes, but he plays 60% of the snaps, whereas Tank Dell, I think, is playing more and is pretty good. But Ramondre comes in at 40, so he's a good point and a half higher in the projections. But and he can score some points, as a receiver as well. But I agree, it's been ugly. If you're looking to not start him, then I probably would go with Tank Dell or Rashee Rice just to make it fun.
I'm starting Ramondre Stevenson. I'm throwing him back out there and hoping for the best. Rashee Rice would be my number 2 if you really don't want to play Ramondre, but I think Ramondre is, I'm not going to say head and shoulders better than the 3 other players as a start this week, but I am fairly more confident in him than I am the 3 wide receivers for a volume floor. The fact that they play Washington, who just traded away 2 defensive linemen as well too, which Yam Baggy brought up as well too. Is Ramondre going to eat this week with Washington trading away their 2 top defensive players? That's certainly an aspect that we can throw in here as well for a narrative to start Ramondre this week.
The problem is he hasn't eaten in quite some time. I mean, he had the good game against Vegas, which was his best matchup all year. He had 10 for 46 and a touchdown, and he had 5 catches for 24 yards. 6 catches against Buffalo in week 7.
Right.
But he hasn't cracked 50 yards rushing since week 3.
Super unfortunate.
But he had 85 yards against the Bills, though, 2 weeks ago. So you could hang your hat on that. 46 yards rushing against Vegas with 24 yards receiving. And then last week against Miami, just, 10 carries for 39 yards, 2 catches for 11 yards, just kind of a miserable outing.
So I get not wanting to start Ramondre, but I think I would start him.
I can always tell myself stories about players like this, like, oh, right. He did this, and
but he could do that. But
he did that.
Jax, we have a Demario Douglas question in here. Are we going Douglas or Juju this week with Kendrick Bourne tearing his ACL, Devontae Parker also probably out this week as well? Thomas also to double down on Demario Douglas. Curious on your thoughts on Pop Douglas. So is Douglas the guy for you this week in New England?
Yeah, I've got him in the top 40. I've got Smith-Schuster at 73. So if that tells you, now Smith-Schuster could surprise. He just hasn't done much at all this year. I think he had a touchdown recently, but it was 1 catch.
That was last
whereas Douglas has consistently been the number 2 guy there for the last few weeks next to Bourne. And I just want to say, Kendrick Bourne, thank you. I ranked you higher than consensus every week. You almost always delivered. And wish you a speedy recovery if you're out there listening to our AMA. This is a no-brainer for me, and it might backfire, but Demario Douglas has been seeing more routes, more targets consistently. He's the shiny new toy, so I'm going to go with him. You are, but I just also want to mention Jalen Reagor has been playing ahead of Devontae Parker the last couple weeks. So I don't know that he's going to do anything with that playing time, but it's the top 3 there are Demario Douglas, Jalen Reagor, and Juju Smith-Schuster.
But at number 1, the most important one is Demario Douglas. I mean, if there's anybody in that offense, I think, who has the ability to be to replace Kendrick Bourne 1-for-1, I think it's Demario Douglas. I mean, like you said, he was already playing as the wide receiver 2. He was already seeing decent targets already. I think he had 7 targets last week with Kendrick Bourne. Now Bourne left early, but he had 7 targets last week. I think he had 6 the week
6
prior.
week before. Yep.
And I think the only reason why he's not more of a household name right now is because he was injured for like the mid part of the season that we've already played through already. But he had one game very early on. I think it was week 2, maybe, where he also saw decent targets. Then got injured.
Week 1 against Philly, 4 for 40 against Philly. Against Dallas, 2 for 45 on 3 targets. And then the last couple of weeks, he had 6 targets 2 weeks ago, 7 targets last week. Also, they're handing him the ball. So he had 20 yards rushing against Buffalo and then 4 yards rushing against Miami. I would expect that sort of role to increase. I don't think necessarily he's going to be a big touchdown guy, but if you're just looking for some PPR points, he's, good bet to score, go 5 for 50 or something like that and maybe get you a touchdown.
Yep, I agree. Demario Douglas is the guy in New England for sure. I still have hope for Tyquan Thornton, but that hope is fading very, very quickly.
Wow.
You shouted out Jalen Reagor. I just want to say I think Tyquan Thornton is better than Jalen Reagor, but Reagor is seeing the snaps and routes.
That might be Reagor. Yeah, it matters. You have to be on the field in order to score the fantasy points. That's
true.
One thing I've learned in the last 12 years doing rankings.
Christian is asking Sam Howell or Daniel Jones this week. Very interesting question. I think I'm going with Sam Howell again. Dude's a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. He just has to throw.
Top 6. Forget where he landed after his number. He was QB1 last week.
Yeah, against Philly.
I just want to pull it up because I do like to take a victory lap on Sam Howell. He's my favorite. He's QB8 right now, season to date. He was my favorite late round quarterback, late round quarterback, and I was pairing him a lot with Geno, who hasn't really delivered, and actually with Daniel Jones, who hasn't delivered. So Howell's saving some of my teams. I think this is a fairly easy go with Howell. You're not going to get the QB 1 week against New England. It's going to be probably a lower scoring game. But as you just mentioned, Washington gave up 2 of their best defensive linemen. They're just kind of laying down on defense. So, New England could score quite a bit in this one. And that means Howell's actually, I think the Commanders are 3rd or 4th in pass rate over expectation right now. So they are kind of opening it up and trusting Howell to move the ball. And he's got a great receiving core. I think Curtis Samuel might be out this week, but we saw Jamison Crowder pop up as the wide receiver 3. They've got Diami Brown, who can also do it.
They remembered they have Jahan Dotson.
They remembered that, which he's a sneaky start this week. And then, of course, Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas. So I would go with Howell. Don't really trust Daniel Jones first game back. Also, if you just look at the AFPA, Daniel Jones Vegas is 4th in that metric because they're bad against the run. So I would expect a big game for Saquon Barkley. Them just sort of ease Daniel Jones back in with his neck injury.
And they don't have Waller either.
Yeah, and the Patriots are 6th in that metric. So it's actually a slightly better matchup for Howell.
AFPA, for those of you that don't know, the abbreviation is adjusted fantasy points allowed. It's the adjusted defensive metrics. Just in case if anybody didn't know what that abbreviation was, adjusted fantasy points allowed. But yeah, Sam Howell for sure. We got it here for the memes with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Sorry we weren't here for you last week. I don't know if you heard at the beginning, but my power was out all day last Friday. So that was fun. But here for the memes. Happy Friday, y'all. Dynasty question. How do you guys value T. Higgins? I want to offer a 24 or 25 first to pair with Gabriel Davis. Is that Gabriel Davis? I'm assuming that G-Dub. Yeah. Plus Amon-Ra plus Hill. Oh, so you want to offer a first for T. Higgins to then have in your wide receiver room Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh, that might be Garrett Wilson, actually. That's Garrett Wilson. I read this all so horribly. How would you value T. Higgins in Dynasty? He wants to offer either a 24 or a 25 first to go get T. Higgins. Both of which I would do. I would start with a 25 if you want to try and go for that route. Then move to the 24. I would even add on a second onto that as well too, if you want to do a first and second. I wouldn't pay 2 firsts for T. Higgins, but I would go fairly close with the first and second as well. Because I think he bounces back. Do you think he has a good second half of the season?
I mean, we have a pretty large. This is a weird deal with T. Higgins. Like, what is going on? Some of these games, it's been, and some of it might have been Joe Burrow's calf
Joe
injury.
Burrow was hurt,
kind of,
then he was hurt, and then
Yeah, he missed a game against Arizona, which was Joe Burrow's best game. He had 5 for 69 and 6 targets last week, so that's a normal type T. Higgins type game. I mean, he started the year with a goose egg against Cleveland on 8 targets. The following week, he had 8 for 89 and 2 touchdowns on 12 targets.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had like 3 bad games in a row, 2 for 21, 2 for 19, 2 for 20. So some of these were against good matchups too. Tennessee, Arizona, not Arizona.
I think a
Tennessee
lot of that was
Seattle.
just Burrow. He saw decent targets through those games too.
8, 4, and 4.
First 3 he did.
Yeah. For first 3 for sure. So what I was getting at was that if you look at his rest of season schedule, Buffalo this week, kind of a mediocre matchup, but probably heading towards a favorable matchup given the injuries for Buffalo. And he's got Houston and Baltimore. They're both top 10, top 8 type against receivers. So it might be tough for those weeks. But then after that, Pittsburgh 30th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to receivers, Jacksonville 24th, pass funnel, Colts 25th, Minnesota 22nd, and then Pittsburgh again in week 16, 30th. So there's a good stretch there where Higgins could help you. And then you're getting him for Dynasty as well. I think Dynasty, he's probably fine. You might be able to speak to that better than I would.
Well, I mean, I love him in Dynasty. And there's the aspect, too, from a Dynasty perspective of an impending free agency. Can Cincinnati re-sign him? If they don't, I would assume that he would sign somewhere as a big-ticket free agent to potentially be a team's wide receiver 1. So his situation may improve from a target standpoint to where he's not having to compete with Jamar Chase. And he is more of the alpha wide receiver 1 in an offense moving forward. Even if the quarterback situation isn't as good as Joe Burrow, which more often than not, in most cases, it probably wouldn't be. But he would lose having to compete with Jamar Chase, which would be a positive.
Does it matter if it's an early first or a late first?
No, I think as long as you're not giving up Marvin Harrison Jr., I would trade any wide receiver in next year's class for T. Higgins. That's not Marvin Harrison Jr. So yeah. And if it's a mid first and a mid second, go for it. Go get T. Higgins. I think he's a phenomenal buy right now, especially if you can get him for only 1 first. I think that's great. So yeah. So thank you here for the memes for joining us again. Bay Diamonds has a super chat in here as well too. Let me see if I can find the message. If he had a message, I don't see one.
Maybe he's just giving us a buck.
That would be great. Let's see. I don't Bay Diamonds. So I'll keep an eye on it if you throw a message out here. But if you just wanted to toss $1, that's very much appreciated as well too. So thank you. But I'll keep an eye on it. I don't see anything right now. But we can start going back to where we were, which was Trey asking, would you rather have Amari Cooper or Kenneth Walker in the flex this week? Not sure what kind of situation you're in where you're debating Kenneth Walker in your flex spot, but that's a pretty good spot to be in.
I think I'm, my mentally, when I first got reaction to this is Walker. It does sound like Deshaun Watson might be back. I don't know. I guess that's a good thing. Well, in PPR, this is fairly close, but I have Walker at 35, Cooper at 41. I don't know how much more Cooper will move up if it's Watson, because he's looked pretty bad. And PJ Walker's been okay for Amari Cooper. So I think I'd probably go with Kenneth Walker. And Seattle, their best bet to move the ball is actually to run it. Ravens are pretty tough against the pass, less so against the run this year. So they might be able to move the ball with Walker.
Yeah, I'm also going with Kenneth Walker as well too. I'm hoping that Deshaun Watson can come back. And because he had 2 top 10 finishes in the first 3 weeks, and then he got hurt, and then he returned, and then he like fumbled or whatever, and then he got hurt again in that game, and then it was like he had like negative 0.3 points or something like that. I don't know. It was weird. But yeah, I'm not trusting it anyway in the first week back if Deshaun Watson is playing. So I'll go with Kenneth Walker as well too. Let's see. Are we giving up on Christian Watson? Would you play Tank Dell over him?
I would. I have him ranked 2 points PPR ahead of him. I like the matchup with Stroud against that Tampa pass funnel defense, and Tank's been good. He's also, like, I noticed he scored really well in the open score for the ESPN advanced stats. So he's getting open on top of it.
Is that the one that has Tyreek Hill ranked as the 16th best wide receiver in the league?
Might be.
Because I saw that and I immediately
you just disregarded it.
Yeah, I just was like,
well. I mean, there's things you can take from it. I wouldn't rank Tyreek Hill 19th. I didn't notice that he's 19th.
Yeah, something like that. 19. That's even worse. Great.
But if you just look at the open score, Tank Dell is at 4. Tyreek's at 17 in that. So obviously not a good route runner.
Yeah, terrible.
As a Packer fan, Watson, they take a few shots. They spread the ball around. If he catches a bomb, then he's going to have a good fantasy day for you. If he doesn't, he's not going to. Whereas I think Tank Dell has more chances to perhaps produce. But, with Watson, it's like you have to start. It's like Gabe Davis. You got to start him every week. Although Gabe Davis has been a lot more productive.
Davis has been phenomenal. Except for the 1 week where I said to start him over Jalen Warren. But other than that.
So, yeah, I mean, I would go Dell. I think has a higher floor. Watson he's got a ceiling every week, but this Packer offense is not going well. And I don't have a ton of confidence that they're going to be turning things around quickly because they had, a terrible game against Vegas. They had a bye week. They came out, they were terrible the following week. So it's just like, we're not seeing the improvement. So some of that, I've lost a lot of faith in Matt LaFleur, and I'm wondering about him as the long-term solution head coach. And I'm a little bit more lenient with Jordan Love because of just lack of experience. But, you're wanting to see some mistakes getting corrected and some improvement, and that we haven't seen in the last month. So I'm not giving up on Watson, whereas I'm cutting him, but he's nowhere near what he was doing last year.
I think he's a sit until we actually see it happen. Like, I can't continue to throw him out there hoping for that game to happen. Like, I'd rather miss the game
than keep doing
by sitting him than continuing to play him and he has like 6 or 7 fantasy points. Like, I can't keep doing that. And Tank Dell has a better quarterback by far as well too. So I am not a Jordan Love believer.
Well, Stroud's good. I mean, I admit that Stroud's better than Jordan Love. Certainly early returns justify that.
Jacob hit us with a $5 super chat as well. Jacob, thank you so much for the support. He's asking in a dynasty league. This is a 12-team, 1 quarterback, non-PPR. So 1 quarterback is the very key aspect of this here too. Would you trade away Josh Allen and Javonte Williams for Lamar Jackson, Tony Pollard, and a 2025 first? He does say that first would be late, likely be late, but I don't care because this is a 1 quarterback league, and Tony Pollard and the 25 first are the 2 most valuable assets in this deal in a 1 quarterback league. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson can effectively be canceled out, and I would hands down take Pollard in a first over Javonte Williams. So I feel like that's a pretty easy deal.
Yeah, it actually is interesting though when you think about it. Now, you're thinking that Pollard's poor season. I mean, he's been disappointing, right?
Yes.
So, and Javante's coming on, but they're not getting closer for you.
Well, not to the aspect where I would pair a first with Pollard to go then get Javonte. Yeah. That's like, I would still take that 25 first over Javonte straight up. Not even discussing Pollard in here. I would take the first over Javonte. So now I'm getting a free Tony Pollard, who I still think is better than Javonte Williams. This trade to me is pretty simple. I will take Lamar, Pollard.
And the quarterbacks don't matter. Those 2 quarterbacks don't matter.
They effectively don't in a 1 quarterback league. If this was super flex, then I could understand it maybe a little bit more because the bump from Lamar to Josh Allen might be nicer from a super flex perspective. But even then, I'd probably still take this. I'd probably still take the Lamar side in a super flex league, let alone a 1-quarterback league. So yeah, make that deal, Jacob. That's a phenomenal trade if you're getting Lamar, Pollard in the first. And thank you for the $5 super chat. I'm still looking. I haven't seen anything from Bay Diamonds on in here. So maybe he just tossed us the buck. Maybe he lost power as he was trying to submit it. Let's see. I don't even remember where we were. D Money in a redraft. Need to drop players hoping to trade for fab or picks since it is a keeper league. Who do you send and for what in each category? Waller, Pitts, Njoku, Sanders, Pierce, PPR, non-tight end premium. Ooh, this might be a little bit more of a difficult question to answer in an AMA. The who do you send and for what kind of thing.
I would just say I'm not optimistic that Waller is going to be back soon. I think their bye is looming week 13 as well. They don't have any reason to rush him back, I don't think. So there's that. And then Miles Sanders, I don't know if you don't cut him, are you holding until he's back in the mix? It's bad.
Everybody's on the block for whatever I can get except for Kyle Pitts. I will wait for a good offer on Pitts. I can't necessarily say like for what, but everybody else, I'm done.
I would also mention Njoku's worse with Watson.
Oof.
Than he is with PJ Walker. So that's not good.
Speaking of Darren Waller, is it safe to drop him if you have McBride?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends on your
league.
Well, no, do you think that Kyler's going to be back?
Oh,
if you're one of these people that doesn't think that Kyler's going to be back, then McBride is dangerous. If you think Kyler will be back, not this week, but next week, which is, I would call it the consensus reporting, but we really don't know what Arizona's wanting to do. He's technically healthy. He's not on the injury report now, but he's not starting this week against Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think they're just Cleveland's got a really good defense. We're not going to start him on the road against Cleveland. We're going to start him the following week when he has a more favorable matchup. I forget what it is, but not against an easier D. So with Waller, as I mentioned, I think it's I'm trying to pull up the schedule right now. I think it's a week 13 bye.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
So we're already in week 9. He's got a hamstring, and if it's significant, which it seems like it's at least significant to keep him out this week, there's only 3 weeks till the bye. They might bring him back before then. And then if he's back, is he better than McBride? But you're also running the risk now. You're holding Waller and you don't have him until week 14.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not like he's not Kittle, Kelsey or Hawkinson or Laporta
Right.
at this point. He's just kind of, he's still on the Giants. So I would go with McBride. He's really played well. Ertz has been out. If Ertz comes back, I think it'll still be McBride at this point. They were already moving to McBride as a starter. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I would make this move.
Yeah, I would too. We're coming up to very important weeks here where you kind of need as many people as you can that are healthy on your bench. And you can't really afford now to have to wait on people that are going to be out for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks potentially. Yeah, I would drop Darren Waller as well too. I think you do need to address the tight end position because I do agree when Zach Ertz comes back, McBride could be in trouble. But that's probably in a couple weeks still. But maybe with Kyler coming back, that changes things. We'll see. D Money. He said, thanks, guys. Sad to see Sanders drop. Appreciate the conversation. Yeah, Miles Sanders his fall from grace has been crazy to watch. It was so fast too. And he signed I forgot he signed a 4-year deal. in Carolina, and they're done with him halfway through the first year.
It's weird with running backs how that works.
Oof.
He wasn't bad at the start. I think the injuries have, he was always one that missed a few games, and then he had his best year last year. But he started with 18 for 72 against Atlanta. But then just the yards per carry are just bad. 14 for 43, 9 for 24 against Seattle, Minnesota 13 for 19, Detroit 7 for 32. These are all pretty bad matchups. And then he was injured for the Miami game, and then didn't get to play against Houston. And now you're looking at Chuba Hubbard against Indy, Chicago the next 2 weeks. He could lock in that role, but he's getting opportunities. Like Chuba will be getting opportunities against better matchups, but then also Hubbard has been playing better the last month and a half. So he's earned it.
Yeah, for sure. And the way that Frank Wright talks about both of them is it's so underwhelming for Miles Sanders. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets cut next.
You should not be giving running backs big contracts and free agency unless they're like elite.
The funny part about it too was like it wasn't necessarily like a quote unquote big contract. Like it was 4 years, but it was only for $25 million. So it's only like $6 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, you can get Kareem Hunt for $2 million for 1 year. It's like, are we sure that Miles Sanders is better than Kareem Hunt?
Leonard Fournette just signed.
Yeah, I mean, heading into this year, like there's just so many running backs out there.
They could cut him next year, and it would effectively be a wash. He's not really cuttable until 2025 in terms of like saving cap, but I would not be surprised if he was gone or traded. Oof. Lee needs a tight end in a half PPR league. Would you go with Cade Otton, Gerald Everett, Michael Mayer, or Hunter Henry? This is where we're at. This might reach out to a lot of the Darren Waller managers out there as well, too. This might be the options that you're looking at this week.
Everett, he missed last week. He was full on Friday and then didn't play. So, you got to be sure he's going to play. I do like Parham if Everett, of all these guys, I would play Parham over all these guys if Everett were to sit. But I've got Hunter Henry at 16, Parham at 14. So if Everett plays, I don't think that he's going to be quite as high as Parham because they're going to be splitting time. So I've got Henry at 16. I got Mayer at 17, Otton at 22. And I kind of lean Hunter Henry just because of the Bourne injury. Maybe he gets back to what he was doing earlier in the year. Have to check the injury report. I know he got dinged up and hasn't done as well the last few weeks, but pretty good matchup against Washington with Bourne out. I think he probably has the most upside. Mayer is interesting though with the quarterback change. I don't know if that's good or bad for him. O'Connell just peppered Devontae Adams with targets in his one start against the Chargers. So I had to downgrade Jacoby Myers. I don't know what they're going to do with Mayer. He's definitely been trending up in terms of playing time, but I don't know how that is going to jibe with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback.
Henry did have 3 for 28 last week, which was kind of significantly the best production that he's had in a month. And I don't know, like I can't quickly pull up like how much of that was like before or after the Kendrick Bourne injury. I would assume a decent number of that, at least 2 of those, probably after the Bourne injury, which doesn't sound significant, but if that's 2 receptions in 1 half, then that could be 4 or 5 throughout a game. Then that could be significant for you for a tight end.
The other player I would like everybody to keep an eye on is Daniel Bellinger for the Giants. With Waller out, he's now back into a starting role, and Vegas was 17th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to tight end so far. He could surprise. I've got him at 20 this week as a streaming option for some folks.
Love it. Henry needs some help. In half PPR league, would you start Deonta Foreman or Zach Charbonnet? And I think the answer is Charbonnet.
It is.
That's all the reaction you need.
I mean,
sorry, Henry.
Like it's bad. I mean, I don't say that lightly. Donta Foreman is at 27 this week, but a very non-confident 27. He's Rashawn Johnson at 31 for me, and then I've got Charbonnet down at 48. So I still think he's a complimentary player to Kenneth Walker until we see if Charbonnet's increased workload last week was due to Walker's injury, or if it was now a sea change in terms of that backfield being more of a RBBC.
That I think it's because of the injury, but I'm wondering if Walker is still
shoving in the door,
hampered from that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This week,
if Walker's still.
Yeah.
Just look at his practice.
Well, I think he was off the injury report last week, but then I it just seemed like that usage was so injury related.
Well, I think he was, but he didn't practice, I think, 2 of the days or something. So I think they just decided, well, this is a good opportunity to get Charbonnet involved. Let me see what he did last week. Yeah, he did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday. And then he was full on Friday.
Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry, Henry. Some more running backs. Start 3 in a full PPR league. Gus Edwards, Roschon Johnson, Amari DeMarcado, Miles Sanders, Royce Freeman. He's caught in a bind with CMC on bye this week. Dave Montgomery's hurt. Kyron Williams is hurt. Rough. So you got to start 3 of these guys in a full PPR. Gus Edwards, I think, is locked.
Yes.
And I think Amari is also locked as well, too.
Well, he's got a toe injury. So I don't know if he's going to play. If he does play, yes, I would put him in. He's getting the touches. Other than that, if Amari were to sit, then I think I would go with Roschon in full PPR because he might get some catches this week.
So those are the 3 for you, the first 3: Gus, Roschon, and Amari. If Amari doesn't play, you're playing Gus, Roschon, and
you need 3. Gotcha.
And Freeman.
How sad is that? You're starting Royce Freeman over Miles Sanders.
Welcome to fantasy football.
Because at least Freeman, we saw Sanders was RB3 last week. And that still could be due to the injury. Maybe they were giving him kind of the week off, but we did see Freeman at least split time with Henderson, and he does have a good matchup against the Packers. So if Amari sits, I would go with Freeman over Sanders, sadly.
Sawyer, I'm also so sorry. But hopefully Cuss can do the same thing that he did last week as well. That was phenomenal. And I think he's starting to separate himself as the RB1 over Justice Hill. So that's good for Gus Edwards. More running back injuries, I guess. Dameon Pierce doesn't look like he's playing this week. So if he's out, who do you sit out of Singletary, Hunt, and Jahan Dotson? So you got to.
He's saying and drop for a kicker. So he has to cut one of these and start one of these?
He has to start 2 and cut 1, it sounds like. It seems like he dropped his kicker maybe for Singletary to see if Dameon Pierce was going to play or not. And now that Pierce is out, he's got to potentially either play Singletary or drop him or Hunt. I think we can exclude Dotson from this. Can we exclude Dotson? Because you're not cutting him either.
Yeah, you want to start him, right?
You want to start him, and there's no way I would recommend cutting him right now. So this is between Devin Singletary and Kareem Hunt. So you got to pick one to play, and the other is getting cut for a kicker. This has just been a horrible.
I would love to see this. Love to see this roster and why this has to be like this. It has to be like a short bench. Weird, like something weird's going on.
I'm so sorry.
So Hunt, I think we like thinking about him long term. He's the goal line back for Cleveland. Good running game. We're not sure that Jerome Ford is significantly better than him, in my opinion. Ford had has long runs and then doesn't do anything for like stretches.
Right.
He's got this ankle injury as well. So I think like if you're looking at over the next 6 weeks, Hunt and Singletary, I think Hunt is slightly more valuable than Singletary because of Pierce. But if Pierce is out and is out for, we don't know how bad this ankle injury is.
Right.
then Singletary is certainly ahead of Hunt. Right? Would you agree that he'd be the
If he
clear lead back?
as the clear lead back, yes, he would be.
Yeah.
For however many weeks Dameon Pierce is out.
And then Houston just had their bye.
Yep.
See that this week though, I do have Singletary ahead of Hunt, but Hunt's matchup is so much better. Like Singletary has Tampa, but he's ranked ahead because of touch floor if we assume Pierce is out. So I guess I'd cut Hunt.
Oh my goodness.
Just like rolling the dice that, because at least Ford's playing, so you know that Hunt's going to be in a timeshare. You're kind of rolling the dice that Pierce. The problem is that the Houston running game's bad. Like on top of it, so it's just a volume play. Whereas at least Cleveland has a good running game.
I was gonna say, like, how confident are you in Devin Singletary with the fact that Dameon Pierce has, in fact, like not been all that good this year? But Singletary doesn't have the issue of splitting with really anybody. Like Pierce was splitting with Singletary.
Well, we don't know that. They do have Mike Boone.
Mike Boone.
But I mean, hey, we have seen stranger things. We don't know that he's going to be like an 18, 20 touch back with Pierce out either. So I'm going to switch it. I'm going to keep Hunt and cut Singletary.
That's honestly what I was leaning towards. I mean, I can't trust a Texans running back right now. The fact that they play Tampa Bay, that's scary as well. And the longevity for the remainder of the season, I would also take Kareem Hunt. It's just Singletary is a this week only thing, but I don't know if he's going to significantly outscore Hunt or even outscore him at all this week, even if he is just the guy.
I would really look at your roster and say, is there somebody else I can cut? Is there anyone else I can cut?
Sheesh. I'm so sorry, Hugo. Oh my goodness. Do you have any thoughts on Leonard Fournette signing with the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, I always have thoughts on Fournette. I'm interested to see if they're going to have him. Do we know if he's going to be active this week?
That's a good question. I don't know.
That's usually something I discover on Friday when I'm doing my ranking sweep Friday and Saturday. Basically, I think long term he's going to take over Latavius Murray's role. They were not happy with Murray's production over the last few weeks and decided to go make this move. I think Murray's goal line
and he's hurt too.
Success was not good, and they're bringing in Fournette to be that sort of big body to complement James Cook. So in this offense, that could be valuable. Certainly, if as a contingency attrition type running back, he's going to have a lot of value if he's the RB2 in Buffalo and anything were to happen to Cook. And we've seen, Lenny come up in big spots before. So certainly worth an ad in these bigger where you could, bigger leagues where you can, stockpile RB2s and, wait for somebody to get hurt.
You didn't really want Latavius Murray. So if Fournette's taking the Latavius Murray role, even with Murray still there, I feel like Fournette was Damian Harris insurance almost, which Harris wasn't also doing anything either. So I don't really care. I would leave him on the waiver wire. I wouldn't worry about picking him up. And if you have him, I would probably look to maybe drop him.
I mean, it depends on your other options as always.
That's true. Okay, so we're at 1:00 now. We're at the point now where I will throw out that if you had a dynasty question that we did not, that was not answered, if you're a dynasty question on the DLF side, toss it into the comment section of the replay of this video. Then it acts as more of like a YouTube comment, and then I will respond to every single one of those as well after the show and go more in depth, because sometimes some of these dynasty questions are a little bit harder to do in a shorter form AMA kind of format. So if you have a question like that, anything dynasty related, drop it in the comment section of the replay of this video, and I will be the one that will be answering those. And then maybe we'll have a few more minutes here, kind of a last call. If you have any pressing questions as well, super chats go straight to the front of the line. So if you really need your question answered, you could throw a super chat. But we will try to answer rapid fire, maybe a few of these that we kind of have left that are interesting that maybe are names that we haven't necessarily talked about so far.
Can I share some news from our Fantasy Life app? If you don't have it, download it. Curtis Samuel ruled out. Drake London ruled out. Deshaun Watson will start on Sunday.
Oh.
Titans not ready to name Levis the starter. Frank Reich says Chuba Hubbard will continue to start at running back, so it's good to have. But there will be a committee approach. But that's good to know that if you're going to roll Hubbard out there, that he's not going to pull the rug out from underneath you. Cardinals said they haven't decided who's going to start at quarterback against the Browns, so they could start Kyler. He said they'll decide on the plane.
That sounds like a Jonathan Gannon move if I've ever heard one.
Is he better than Cliff Kingsbury as a coach? Seems like he's better.
I think he's better. Yeah,
they're a frisky team.
Weirder, but better. I think I could see him having Clayton and Kyler both kind of do a little rock paper scissors on the airplane, I'd say.
Or how about before every play they do a rock paper scissors? See who goes in. I think that is all the big news. But
I think you missed the fact that Laviska Shenault is also not going to play.
I skipped it.
Aaron Jones is still wearing the no contact jersey at practice, which is wild.
And is that due to a different injury? Because why would you need that for a hamstring?
Just don't touch him. We need him to be.
I love Aaron Jones too. He looks so good in week 1, and then pulls up. Oh God, what a season for the Packers.
All right, let's see. Let's see if we can rapid fire a few of these start sit questions for some people. Where did it go? I just missed it. Speaking of Aaron Jones, would you start him or Brian Robinson this week? Yikes.
I still go Jones, just hoping he's ready. Robinson's not a bad start. He's been kind of getting pinched a little bit with his touches.
Yeah, Gibson has kind of had. I don't know if that's like by design that Gibson has gotten the more touches because of the receiving work, or if that's just because of the game scripts that they've kind of been in. And they
certainly they had to throw against Philly,
right? But that's the issue with Brian Robinson is he can get game scripted out easily.
Yes, he's also healthy. We know he's healthy. It's close. So if you just are tired of starting Jones, I understand it.
I'd probably still play Jones though. I'd still roll the dice. Might be folly, but it is what it is. Would you play Demario Douglas or Jordan Addison this week? We had a good Douglas discussion earlier, but do you trust him more than Jordan Addison without Kirk Cousins?
I have Addison slightly higher, just thinking that Kevin O'Connell will continue to throw the ball heavily. But Addison's obviously been really good. And I think he's got more touchdown upside.
Yeah.
Even considering the matchups and stuff. Just Demario Douglas, we haven't seen him get the end zone yet. He seems like a kind of a PPR 10-point guy right now.
Maybe this is the week.
Maybe.
He takes over the Kendrick Bourne role. Laughing Duck has DK, Josh Downs, Rashid Rice, and Rashid Shaheed. Pick one of those guys to play in the flex in a PPR league.
That's
man.
Where are we at when we got DK like
thrown in with these guys?
With these guys. I would go DK, although I do have Josh Downs ahead of DK this week at 27-28 right now. And then I've got Rice and Shaheed below that. I mean, Shaheed is a really good. I think he's a really good receiver. He was really high in yards per route run last year. He just has a volume problem because of Michael Thomas being back and Chris Olave. Obviously, those two gobble up so many targets that there's just only so many left for Shaheed, and he's either going to catch 1 for 10 or go 3 for 148.
He's touchdown. What we wanted Christian Watson to be.
Yeah. Well, even then, it would be. It's not enough volume to start him confidently. You throw him in there when there's an injury to Olave or Thomas, or you have to play him because you can't trust him, but he has enough upside that it's worth it as a dart throw.
I would start DK Metcalf. Carolina is a tough matchup on paper, but I think that's because you can just run the ball for 300 yards on them. And when you have the combination of Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, that could each run for like 100 on Carolina. I would go with DK Metcalf and hope for a more of a shootout against Baltimore this week between these guys. Ginger's asking start 2 in a PPR league. Shaheed again, Jahan Dotson, DeMarcado, Demario Douglas, or Singletary if Pierce is out. This is kind of like an amalgam of every single name that we just talked about in the last 5 minutes.
Holy crap. Okay. So
we got to start 2 of these guys.
All right. This needs to be the last question because I'm going to need to curl up on the couch in a fetal position after answering it. Well, go ahead and give your take as I try to sort this out.
Yep. We did just get a super chat as well, too. Brian hit us with a super chat. Although there's no question on it. So, Brian, if you have a question, you could throw one in here. You don't need to do another super chat, but if you have a question, toss it in here. Dotson sticks out as the best option of this group. So I think Dotson's my number 1. And I think my number 2, oh my goodness. Is my number 2 Demario Douglas, or do you go with Devin Singletary for the touch floor? I'm so worried about this Tampa Bay rush defense.
He should catch some passes too, Singletary.
Hopefully.
Yeah, he comes in the highest at 51. It's not a huge point projection difference, but Demario is at. Well, I just don't think DeMarcado is going to play. But he's at 63 right now. Demario Douglas is 67. Shaheed at 74 and Dotson at 75. However, Curtis Samuel was just rolled out, so
right.
I haven't adjusted for that yet. I think that gives Dotson a higher floor. Like he'll easily be the number 2 target or number 1 target. So he's going to move up the ranking. So I would agree with you and go with Dotson, and I probably would go with Singletary for the touch floor.
Dick.
But I will say that Demario Douglas does have a really good matchup against Washington. They're last in the league in adjusted fantasy points allowed to receivers. So if you're a believer in Pop Douglas, this is the week to start him.
Let's do it. I got him in my DraftKings lineup. Let's go. All aboard the Douglas train this week. All right, yeah. So Brian hit us with a super chat as well too, and then the message that he had was that he needs a flex in a 12-team half PPR league. Tank Dell, Darrell Henderson, or Hollywood Brown. And Thomas also right before this also was asking about Henderson and Freeman should eat with no Matthew Stafford. So maybe we can tie in a little bit of that for Thomas as well too. But for Brian, Tank Dell, Darrell Henderson, or Hollywood Brown in the flex this week. Half PPR league as well too, which I think leads me towards Darrell Henderson. I'm a little nervous about Hollywood. I think Hollywood would be the answer if we didn't have quarterback problems.
What if Kyler plays?
See, that first sounds nice, but I'm worried about it's the first game back narrative. It sounds so nice though.
And then Cleveland is really tough. They're 4th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to receivers. Like I would like to have them get a game under their belt before, unless it's a great matchup. I have Henderson the highest, Tank Dell second. It's close. Now, I just want to say on the Packers, if Stafford doesn't play, which it appears he won't, their rush defense will be better against the Rams because there's no threat or very little threat they perceive through the air. They're going to have to get burned by Kupp or Puka a few times in order to loosen up the rush defense, because they will know going in that the Rams are going to want to run the ball more than they normally do and that the Packers are vulnerable against the run. So I just wanted to mention that. Like, I don't think that's Stafford being out helps Henderson and Freeman. It
raises their potential volume,
but efficiency, I think it could go down. Yeah. So just be cognizant of that.
But with that being said, you're starting Darrell Henderson of these 3 this week.
There's also that chance there that they get game scripted out. Like if they don't have the ability to keep up, Packers jump out. I mean, Packers jumping out to a lead would be insane right now. But if they did, what would the Rams be able to do? And they're just, wouldn't be running the ball much anymore at that point.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, I think Henderson probably has a higher touch floor. Next up for me would be Tank Dell, and I would just like to wait a week on Kyler. I mean, this is bad matchup, really bad matchup against Cleveland.
Yeah, it was a bad matchup already. Now we got quarterback issues. Yeah. So Darrell Henderson for Brian and Thomas. Hopefully we talked a little bit on your end as well too with the Henderson and Freeman stuff against Green Bay. So thank you for the super chat as well. Thank you for everybody for joining us. John, I see you in the chat. I saw you had a bunch of Dynasty questions. So if you want to throw them into the comment section of this video afterwards, I will respond to all of them. Packers getting a big league. LOL, who knows? But yeah, so John, I see you in here, but if you throw them into the comment section, then I will answer as many questions as you want to in the comments of this after. I got you, bro. But yeah, so that's going to be it. I think 4for4 actually has another live stream at 1:30 here too. So we do have to end it a little bit before that as well. So we appreciate all of you guys for jumping on, hanging out with us for the past little over an hour, asking all these questions. Thank you for everybody for the super chats and the support. Hopefully you guys win your matchups this week or lose them if you're in Dynasty and you want to lose, because that's the thing in Dynasty. So thank you all so much. Have a great weekend, everybody. And we'll see you all next week for week 10. Later.